if you have a legal question that might come up, then I can try to track him down if he's not here in a couple minutes.
Sure. Sure. I think we can get the, we can call it to order and he can join in. He's typically here in the beginning. All right. It's 6:01 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the City Council of the City of Montgomery, Texas. This evening, we will begin with an invocation. I'd like to make note that Kevin Lacey is not in attendance and everyone else is here. The invocation, TJ Wilkerson, would you please provide that for us, please?
Oh, yes. Lord, thank you. We come this afternoon, Lord, tonight, with humble hearts and bowed heads. We come thanking you for the opportunity that you've given us. We thank you for the victory that you've given us in the storm. We thank you for the victory that you've given us each day. Thank you for all that we've done. Thank you for the clear mind that we come tonight. Thank you for open hearts and open minds and open arms. And thank you for all that you've done throughout this trying time that we've been in, throughout this nation and this city and throughout last week, Lord. And most of all, we thank you for what you're doing right now. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Mayor, the city attorney is present now.
See that. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, United States flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
To the flag
States
of the United States of America,
for which it
to the
stands,
republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the Texas flag. Honor the Texas
Honor
flag.
the Texas flag.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to
to thee,
one state,
Texas, one state under
one and
God,
indivisible.
one and indivisible.
Thank you. Okay. The Visitor and Citizens Forum this evening, we did receive one email that I'll go ahead and read. February 23rd, 2021, City Council members, the City of Montgomery. City Council members, I live at 501 Louisa in the City of Montgomery. It has recently come to my attention that Chris Cheatham is being allowed to connect his parking lot at 21125 Eva Street to Louisa Street, allowing ingress and egress from that commercial location to our street. I feel strongly that this access onto Louisa will cause several problems. First, the road is in poor condition and additional traffic will deteriorate the road further. Second, because the road is narrow, it is very difficult for two cars to pass each other on the road. Third, during periods of high traffic, it is difficult to exit Louisa headed north onto 105. Fourth, it will cause additional unwanted traffic to the residents on this street. And lastly, our entire street has been unable to receive mail because USPS says they are unable to turn around on our road. They do not have enough room. I assume Mr. Cheatham has followed all city protocol as it relates to the approval by the city to add his driveway. I am not aware of this issue coming before the Planning and Zoning Committee. I would think the residents living on Louisa would have been notified in writing of this construction and have been given the opportunity to comment before being approved. I would suggest the road be widened and traffic light be placed at Louisa and 105 before proceeding. Thank you for your time and attention, Efren Lucas. And then I've also received word that Armando Nino would like to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, now. Okay.
Yes, you have the floor. Good.
Pleasure, guy. It was nice to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share a few words and some thoughts. I guess outside looking in, but resident for a long time. I'm class of '89. I graduated with Terry Muckleroy. I see Mike down there, but been here a long time. It was a 2-lane highway back in the day, and remember when Dobbin was Bobtown. And just for a moment to reflect on that, Bobtown's suffering right now. I don't know if y'all know that, but they don't have hot water. And that's going on right now. And the plumbing situation, about 400 of them and all this that's going on, that's fact. All the plumbers I know are in that scenario. What we've seen is the reason the pipes busted and the hot water piping is a different piping than the cold water piping from what they're telling me. And these pipes where a fitting usually costs 85 cents is running about $12.95. This gouging's going on at an extreme level right now. Therefore, they are not able to independently fix these. It's like buying a Corvette to turn their water back on. So they're having this supply and demand situation. So we wanted to plead to the city to, I don't know, procurement of these parts in their behalf and bring it back to the public there, but they are without hot water as we speak. And that was one of the concerns on my list of things I wanted to share. The other was $14,000 for walkie-talkies was brought to my attention. And do they communicate with outer space at $14,000? I mean, that was our question. We wanted to know if the $14,000 walkie-talkies recently purchased are satellite enabled, because we've looked everywhere online for $14,000 worth of walkie-talkies. We can't find one. And then the $10,000 goat costume that we really hope that all the elected officials here can't be on the same page with that. So I plead to that. If we have 25,000 extra dollars, the Montgomery ISD could use it for the emergency relief shelters that we clearly need annually at this rate that we've been going. Every year there's been a crisis. Every year we need a shelter. There hasn't, since Harvey, we haven't escaped nature's wrath. So and I've asked around, I can't find anybody who can tell me who helps the school with these type scenarios. And that's why I came. It was the school who helps the funding for emergency relief shelter there. And how can we support that? How can the community step forward to help support that as well? That's what I have.
Thank you very much. All right. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Number 1, matters related to the approval of minutes of the February 9th, 2021 public hearing and regular meeting.
Hello?
Yes, you're on, TJ. I hear you.
Okay. I move to approve I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the January 26th regular meeting.
TJ, are you talking about the January 9th? I'm sorry, the February 9th, 2021 meeting?
Oh, yeah, yes. Excuse me. I'm right.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 meeting. Public hearing and regular meeting. This motion
That's not my name anyway. I was renamed.
This motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 public hearing and regular meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will approve the minutes of the February 9th, 2021 public hearing and regular meeting. Next item on your agenda, consideration and possible action. Consideration and possible action on departmental reports. A, the city administrator's report. Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. And I believe I did last month's report kind of covering 2020 as a year. And it really seems to be that so far that 2021 is picking up right where 2020 left off with us. I know it's fresh in everyone's mind. I'd like to touch on the recent weather emergency we had last week. That gave us a very specific set of new challenges we haven't seen before. I've lived in Montgomery County virtually my whole life. I've never experienced weather like that here. Honestly, I've been up in the Colorado mountains a few times, including in the winter, and I don't think I've been in temperatures quite that low on a personal level. One of our first considerations is, we expected that kind of level of weather to bring at least some level of power outages. So a couple of department heads here and with the mayor, we had some discussions on, well, what would that mean to our community? And, we opened up communications with Montgomery ISD, Dr. Morrison, and inquired about a way to have and get open an overnight shelter. And ultimately, through those discussions, I believe those took place primarily on Sunday, maybe Saturday and Sunday. We were able to get that coordinated through a number of calls back, and I can certainly preach that MISD was very open, bent over backwards to work with the city to be able to open that. That shelter was run both by city and MISD personnel through the week. As a further consideration, Precinct 1 was planning to open up a daytime only warming center at their community building on Lone Star Parkway. Due to issues with the generator there, they were unable to do that. And so we kept the Madeley Ranch Elementary Shelter open during the day and at night. So it could be both a daytime warming center and an overnight shelter. That was something that primarily both the city and MISD police departments, also to a lesser degree, city public works helped with. But it was definitely a joint effort where both the city and MISD were instrumental in bringing that together on short notice. I definitely want to credit MISD for working with us, helping to make something happen for residents, not just for the city of Montgomery, but the greater Montgomery area. Another area I want to give credit where it's due is the city public works crews who worked hard during the emergency to keep our water treatment facilities operating during the emergency conditions. Because of their work, sometimes their hands-on work, they were able to keep the city's water and wastewater systems operational. I know we've had a lot of calls here. I'm sure council, many of you have seen in the press, a number of areas across the state are under boil water notices because they either completely lost their water production capability or they had their water pressure drop below a point that required the issuance of a boil water notice. And the city's water pressure did get lower than normal, but it never got to the point of having to issue a boil water notice. And the reason for that was, the staff keeping ahead of the problem. And sometimes it meant manual operation of facilities to make sure that pressure did not drop when some gauges were found to be frozen. So I want to make sure credit's given out there to Public Works as well, working in difficult and cold temperatures, frozen precipitation. In addition, we forwarded put out with on social media, the city's utility department has a cell phone line for extra communications. We put that number out into the community so we could better dispatch emergency calls to Public Works. So, across several departments in the city, we had a number of personnel, bending over backwards and working in alternative means to keep our internal communications going so that we could have the best response plan possible. As much as we had seen, this was very cold weather for us coming and we expected there to be problems. It's hard to say I could anticipate and our staff here could anticipate exactly what 8 and 9 degree weather would mean to us with more snow than I can recall seeing in this area during my lifetime. But at the same time, I feel like the city did a good job in its response. We have an after action meeting that we're planning later this week. We're going to use our experiences as the base of follow-up of where to take our other emergency plans. In many ways, the situation we experienced will have many similar responses to hurricane response. Long-term power outages, possible displacement of people. We're looking at moving our planning forward and taking it to the next level, taking lessons that we learned here. As for upcoming meetings, I know there's a lot of questions out there about Entergy. In the next couple of meetings, I'm going to be issuing an invitation for Entergy to send representatives here, City Council, so they can advise us, directly on things that happened and what they're going to do in the future to ensure better and more complete and continuous electric service. I don't know of an area of the city that did not go without power for significant times at some point. There were a couple areas of the city that were out of power for almost the entire emergency. There's a couple areas that I know of that were possibly involved in the rolling blackouts. When they got restored, they were only on for maybe an hour, and they were off for several days. Then they went back on 15, 20 minutes later, they were out again. And it was really the next day before they got restored. So there's a couple areas there that I know into Entergy plans to address in more detail, but I think providing them the direct opportunity to speak to the people of Montgomery and City Council will be good for them. Another area I want to touch on when I was talking about individual departments, Montgomery Police Department, in addition to the other work that they did, we did receive some word through social media channels that there may have been some additional need for some of the population in one of the apartment complexes. And the police department did go to make contact with people there, made sure that if people were needing transport to an emergency shelter, that we could help arrange that and make sure those people got there, or if there were other specific needs. So when there were calls that came throughout the community, the police department found a way to get with those people. And if there was a need for them to get to shelter, they were ready to help provide that need gets connected. Touching base on an item that's on the agenda for tonight is the installation of a system for being able to stream meetings from the city council chambers. Yeah, I'm sure a number of the council, perhaps everyone, is been asking the question, when can we get back together to have meetings more live? One of the issues with that is because of the small size of our council chambers, we simply can't get together in significant numbers that occupy council, mayor, staff, consultants, and then have room for the public in there. By following through with one of these plans, we'd be able to stream these meetings live, being able to have the players of the meeting, the mayor, the council, consultants, staff there live, with the public still being able to watch through live video feed. And we'd be able to continue as we do now, provide a recorded video feed for the meeting. So as I said, that's an item on the agenda. We'll get to that in a little bit. Also, the recent meeting, we had several questions and follow-up related to the planned development district that's generally located in the northeast portion of the city. In talking with city staff and the engineer, we also sent the information over to the city's attorney. We're going to look to schedule meetings with both city council and planning and zoning commission, possibly as a special joint meeting, so that we can make sure all of us are brought up to speed from a legal and engineering point of view of all the elements of the contract. There's really 3 different agreements there, but the original one, it expires 2024. So there's still several years on that. I don't believe anyone who's currently on the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council were involved with the city at the original time of these agreements in the capacities they're here now. And so I think it's best for all of us to be brought up to speed with the information that's in there. And I think in a group format will allow for the best possible discussion of that. As I mentioned before, talking about last week's weather emergency, that also meant that last week was spent primarily responding to emergency situations. There's some things that may have normally been processed for this meeting that weren't ready for this meeting. And so this is a lighter agenda. We'll be playing catch up on that in the next couple of weeks. I want to just touch base on that. If the next meeting or two looks a little more crowded, it's a potential backlog from just the response last week. Pretty much dealing with staff in an emergency. I try to make sure everyone knows the primary objective is just making sure basic city services are supplied to the residents that need them in times of emergency is always the primary consideration. Also, as I mentioned last meeting, I'm planning late March, late April, looking for take some short family vacation time. And then I have a longer family vacation planned for October. I'll continue to keep council updated with regards to specific dates for that as those come along. March 25th, 26th. I'm also attending city management training through Texas Municipal League. And if you have any questions for my report, I'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, I'll run through the departmental reports, and I do have the department's heads here if there's anything specific you need them for. So first, I'll ask if there are any questions on my report.
Richard, I don't have any questions, but I too want to praise Public Works and PD. I was out and about helping find shelters and whatnot, and they were all hands on deck and they did a great job. And luckily there wasn't a whole lot of people out, so that was good too. But a great job, guys. Chief Solomon and Mike McElroy.
Mr. Tram, I have a question. Are city services fully?
Hold on, Armando, this is our meeting. There is nobody from the outside to speak.
And Mr. Nino, if you want to contact me outside of the meeting format, I'll be happy to talk with you. So,
Thank you. Sorry, this is for us to.
Yeah. And Mayor, thank you for that. Yep. The work for this crossed multiple departments, and a number of those people bending over backwards in just in ways that, I guess I'll just, it's probably best for me to say, I know some of what they went through. I'm sure I don't know all of it. And the most important thing is that they found ways to get the job done. It's like, I think one of the biggest things in terms of Public Works is they kept the city's water system running, and we did not have a boil water notice. Many locations out there had those. That's certainly no shame to their operations. Because of broken pipes at many customers' homes, there's just was a huge drag on water production capabilities. And so it's like, I'm very glad our Public Works started by staying on top of that early, and they managed to stay ahead of the curve on that one.
Now, Richard, did I hear correctly that we had guys sleeping in the water areas, like flipping the switches manually all night long just to make sure that we kept everything working and not frozen?
Yes, ma'am. Because an elevation gauge was frozen, which is what tells the feed from that gauge tells the well when to go on, when to go off. We had personnel who stayed overnight, and if you think it was cold outside, it's getting down to 8 and 9 degrees, and someone's staying up in a concrete building. Yes, they did have heat available, but it's still not the most pleasant environment. But when I said they were running that manually, they were watching levels and flipping switches on and off to keep those running.
Well,
I know that was not a pleasant way to be working, but they did the job that needed to get done.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was Mike, you could probably vouch for this, but that we did not cool any water coming out of the ground in our hottest well, because by the time it hit it was so cold by the time it hit our hands. It was actually tolerable. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. We blended the two wells together is what we did.
Yeah.
Instead of the normal process of running through the cooling tower.
It did seem a little hotter than normal, but I liked it because it was so cold in our house.
Well, I figured under the conditions, without most people that electricity, they probably wouldn't mind a little warmer water.
Right. Yeah. Good job. Kudos to you and your guys.
All right. Well, if you're ready, I'll go on with.
B, Public Works. Yep.
Okay. With the Public Works report, Public Works replaced 2 malfunctioning meters. They completed 4 work orders, both for water and for sewer taps. The Fernland docents reported 793 visitors and 46 tours in the month of January, which I find really remarkable. That's an awful lot of people just to go through in 1 month. And weather wasn't always the most pleasant January. Obviously, our winter weather sometimes has potential to be really good to be out. But I think that's just that's a lot more people than I would normally expect to go through there. And so I think there's a high point for me in our community. Public Works also removed and placed into storage all the Christmas decorations from multiple sites in the city. And Mike McElroy's here if anyone has questions for him related to his report. If not,
you should
then
start showing him some orange reflective capes instead of vests. So
Well, what is the saying? All superheroes don't wear capes, you know?
That's true.
Yeah, I think as most of council knows, I came up in the public works end of the business. So I may understand what they go through more than some of the other departments, but yeah, they worked under some harsh conditions, as did many others. So their effort is not lost on me. I was kept busy through all of this. I had the luxury of being indoors most of the time. On to the police department. The calls for service at 198 calls during the month of January. I'd like to point out that's up from 102 calls in the month of January 2020. So a significant increase in the number of calls, keeping our officers busy. 4 officers attended training during the month. The police department is running traffic studies on major roadways in different parts of the city. They're now offering a business watch form on the police department portion of the city's website for businesses that are looking to have, be able to draw, have the police over to those areas and what to help look for. This is in addition to, there's already been a feature for home vacation watch. So for citizens and residents out there, as well as business owner, those features are available through the police department here, and they can go through the city's website for that. One thing I definitely want to push out because it's relevant in terms of the recent emergency. We're using through the police department Nixle emergency alerts. You can sign up, and I will cover this information again. I'm going to go through it quickly. You can text MOPD alert to the number 888-777 to receive emergency alerts. We will be pushing this information out and how to sign up for it out in the next month through the water bills, the signboard, the social media page. Well, our goal is to be able to get in front of the hurricane season, and that'll be become an additional way that will be help to convey additional information out there to the public. Not everyone may use social media, which we used, I think, with good success to be able to get information out during the course of this last week. Most people have cell phones and many use social media, but some may not. And so having a text feature will give us an additional method to be able to get that out. And I'll pause here if anyone has questions for the police chief on his report.
I do. Chief, what are we doing for business owners that want to be escorted to their cars? What number do they need to call, or how are we handling that? And you're on mute. You may have stepped away.
No, I mean, what we're doing is, that wasn't a number that could be created to make that happen. So that's what we're doing with the business request watch that he just, form that he just talked about.
Okay.
On that form is also a place where you can talk about your time of opening, your time of closing. And if you would like patrol to come by there during your closing. We've done that with a number of the businesses here with the AT&T, and a couple businesses outside the city would normally call. But that's what this form is. That's what this form is for. And they can turn that form in, and it also goes to patrol. And that's where if they need an escort, they can get that. In other words, though, but if in other situations, if they've got somebody outside their businesses, then we'd like for them to go ahead and call 911 or call the county, and they'll relay that to us through dispatch.
Okay. Yeah, so there's services provided that sometimes you don't know when you're going to get your hair finished. It could be 5:30, it could be 7. So thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, then I'll go on with the court report. Primarily want to touch on that the collections for December and January are both up from the year before. This is largely due to catching up from the previous backlog where court activities were greatly slowed down by the pandemic situation. Court is largely functioning by Zoom to follow the recommended safety protocols for court operation at this time. And I partly observed the most recent court for there, and I think they're doing a good job to roll with the punches on a difficult situation. I know some of the people, essentially attended the court, from home. There were some people who had come in, they were able to do it from their cell phone in the parking lot, or that, they came in, got the information they needed, and then and left and joined from another location. So, another department finding ways to roll with the situation. And I'll pause for a second if anyone has a question on the court report for the court administrator.
Will the court be able to utilize the infrastructure that you're talking about putting in place for the council chamber for the Zoom court as well?
That's something I haven't walked through yet with the court administrator. Largely that I believe they're working on individual computers, so I think they may choose to continue to do that. But generally speaking, my understanding of how the equipment works, the answer to your question would be yes. I just haven't walked through it with the court department yet. So I don't want to imply that I know the answer without being entirely sure.
I just wasn't sure funding wise if it could be pulled from that budget of court expenses versus a city funding budget. So,
well, I will say this, we could certainly look into that, after the fact here. So, and I hadn't thought of it from that point of view. So it's certainly worth a potential consideration.
thanks.
Okay, then on to the utility report. Want to point out there's a $6,000 escrow collection that was for the Panda Express that is coming in the Shops of Montgomery area location near the Starbucks. I'd also like to specifically report the 869 water accounts. That is up 53 accounts in the last 12 months. So that's a growth rate, not quite 7% in that time, but I think most all of us are aware of just how many not just how many developments have been here, but how many are on the books. We're certainly likely to continue to see this same level of increased growth for the next several years. But I like to go back and on an annual basis at least and look at those comparison numbers and just put them out there to make sure everyone's aware of them. Going from a number in the low 800s approaching the high 800s in just 1 year is pretty significant growth. And if you have any questions on the utility report, we can take that. Otherwise, I will pass it along. I believe the report from Michael for H2O services will be next.
Richard, I have a question about the hotel tax. Who's collecting Airbnb tax? Does Airbnb collect that, or is that up to the individual owners to pay? Or Alan, do you know? Let's see, Alan.
I am not exactly certain of that, so I'll make a note to look into that and follow up with you.
My understanding is that Airbnb has a agreement with the comptroller's office to collect that on behalf of their collective properties. And so I believe it goes through Airbnb to the state comptroller.
So then, Richard, we should be able to see Airbnb taxes on our tax reports. Have you seen that before? I guess you have, because $576 has been collected.
Well,
So
they
that
show
backup is
up,
comptroller, right?
with the hotel taxes, they show up through a different report than our regular sales tax report. Honestly, I don't look at that one nearly as closely, but I'll get with our bookkeeper here to pull that out.
Great, thank you. That's all my questions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Mike Williams with H2O Innovation. We have your operations report for January 2021. If you could go down to page 3, we have your district alerts. We had a lot of minor issues. We did have the chlorine feed equipment issue that we spoke about last month, and a lift station pump starter and a sewer backup, but for the most part, they're just minor issues that happen. Page 4, we have your wastewater plant flow detail. Flow for the month of December to January was 6,311,000 gallons. Daily peak flow was December 31st at 717,000 gallons, and your average daily flow of 203,600 gallons. And we are currently at 51% of your permanent capacity at your facility. Page 5 is your discharge limitations and your effluent monitoring report. All samples were in compliance for the month of January. We recorded a total of 8.5 inches of rain. Following page has your water report. We pumped a total of 8,527,000 gallons, a total flushing of 1,150,000 gallons, bringing us to a subtotal of 7,377,000 gallons with a 96% accountability. If you look over the chart below that, this is your total for 2020. We currently came in at 68 and 69% of your permits used on the wells 2, 3, and 4. Well 2 and 3 sharing a permit, and well 4 having its independent permit. So you're very healthy there on your permit. And below that to the bottom right, we have your connection count totaling 998 connections. The chart below that is your groundwater production chart with a 13-month history, and your water accountability chart with a 13-month history. I'd like to add by saying, without the help of Mike and his guys, with their immediate response times being in the city, we appreciate the help greatly to help us keep the plants running, the extra hands to isolate pipe bursts at the plants. So we greatly appreciate their help during the freeze. That's all I have for now, unless council has any questions.
Did Gulf change names to H2O?
Yes, we were purchased back in July of last year,
Yeah.
and went to a formal name change in December.
Okay.
So.
I was like, wow.
So
It's the first I've seen. Thank you.
yes, ma'am. And I meant to mention that, so as Richard stated earlier, we didn't go below the pressure threshold to issue a boil water notice. We did have reduced pressure in the system, but we went ahead and had bacteriological samples pulled to verify everything was good. And those came back this afternoon, and all the samples came back negative of any bacteria.
Great. All right, thank you. The financial report by Andrew Lasky.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Going through your financial report, turning over to page number 3, your account balances. In your general operating fund, you have roughly 8.5 months of reserve, almost 9 months of reserve, that being from your collection of taxes or ad valorem taxes for the month of January, which the bulk of them will be coming in for that month. For your MEDC, roughly 20 months reserve in there, and about a year's worth of reserve in your utility fund. Just a quick note on your account balances. We are going to look to try to purchase some CDs for some of your funds, just to see if we can get a little bit of a higher rate for some of the money. On your cash flow for your general fund, just a couple of notes there. We did receive some FEMA money for the Atkins Creek, roughly about 30,000 of it, so that was transferred over from your capital projects that it was collected from, as well as received 246,000 for the month of January for your sales tax, and then of course the bulk of your ad valorem taxes came in, roughly over 400,000 of that. Nothing too out of the ordinary on your expenditures for this go around. On your budget, page number 11 is where I'm at on the report for your for the general fund. So far, we're doing pretty well on sales tax. collected for the first 4 months of $840,000. And then we did receive our biggest amount that I've seen to date for sales tax for the month of February, just over $450,000. So we're doing really, really well there. Couple of other notes on your budget. You'll see that some of the expenditures for like personnel and insurance are a little bit higher, but that's because we had a 3-month pay period in December. Eventually that'll start to whittle down and we'll start to get back to normal there. You will see that your other expenditures or the miscellaneous expenses are a little bit higher. So there were a few events that went on during that time during December and January or mainly December for goat naming contest, as well as the parade and the light at the park. The MEDC did contribute money towards those, so you'll see that it's more of a wash on the revenue and expenditure side. There's a little bit more revenues on there, but most of those will show up on your next month's report. I've done those transfers as of about a week ago. So coming up on your February information for your March meeting, you'll see those additional revenues that hit the bank or that hit your budget. Just a couple of other things for your budget on the utility side. The only just a couple of bigger items that I saw on there, which is page 41 of your report. Your tap fees and inspections. There was one larger tap for Eagle Nest, so that's the reason why that one was a little bit higher for that month. And then there were some repairs to lift station number 14 for your utility projects preventive maintenance on page number 42. So just to kind of point out some of the ones that might be a little bit over. So just want to point those out. And then finally, your bond payments are coming up due. I plan to send the information over to the bank tomorrow to get those paid, give them a few extra days, so then that way your 3/1 bond payments will be taken care of.
Sarah, do you
That's all I got,
know,
unless you have any questions.
do we need to discuss somewhere? Are you guys as a city making a provision to cut back on municipal hours this week because they're going to have all this overtime? Do we need to address it in the budget so that we're not cutting their hours? I feel like we shouldn't slap their hands, and I'd rather pay them the overtime for being there to keep the water plants running and know that we're going to be over budget than to force them to cut their hours later in the week and not pay overtime. Do we need to do anything there?
No, and that's something that I don't think we have any need to address right now. When we have emergencies that require additional time, people work the additional time, they get paid for the time they work. They don't get then sent home on the next available nice day just to keep those hours down. If they want to voluntarily ask for an extra day off, I'm happy to entertain that, but they don't get punished because they had to work 16 hours one day, and taken to task the next, where they have work taken away from them for no good reason. There is a time to address that when we have get a little farther down in the fiscal year. We will do potentially a mid-year correction with budget adjustments. There's always elements in the budget that are higher and lower than expected. As Anthony was mentioning earlier, we had the highest collection for the month of February, which is both a monthly and a quarterly filing month, includes the business for the month of December. So it was $92,000 above on the total figure for what we collected for the previous February, 358,000 to 450,000. So that's just one example of an income being much higher than anticipated. On the other hand, there's always expenditures that are higher and lower than anticipated. Public Works always tries to plan in the budget for there being funds that count for emergencies, but it's hard to plan for an emergency.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the long way around of saying, we don't need to make any action on that now, but if it's necessary, we'll be bringing it back up to you.
I just remember late last year, we ended up canceling a heavy trash weekend because of overtime hours. And I would rather make a mental note now that these guys were the true stand-ins. And I would rather make accommodations if we're sitting at 20 months of overage here and 10 months there and 9 months here. I'd rather pay them their worth than to slap their hand later. So just wanted to make sure it was noted.
Okay, but I recall the reason that the trash was actually canceled, it wasn't to avoid paying overtime hours, which they do collect for those days. It was because the dumpsters got filled earlier than anticipated. And so that's why it had the effect of them not collecting the overtime hours they were anticipating, but the dumpsters were filled earlier than were otherwise anticipated. It did lead us in a following trash pickup to have additional dumpster space available.
Okay.
And if there's no other questions for the financial, thank you, Anthony. Then we'll go to the engineer's report. Catherine, yes.
Good evening. We have our report. I'll go through the highlights as normal. The first item on there is your water line improvements project through downtown. That has, if you've driven down 105, I'm sure you have, you've seen that ongoing. They've completed, for the most part, the water line by Cedar Break Park. The smaller black line that you see kind of to the east of the medical building right there at Houston Street, that is a temporary water line. So what's being done as we get into these tighter portions of the project is that temporary water lines being installed to connect everyone to. So while they're doing construction, if they hit the existing line, in some places we're actually using the same location as the existing, the customers stay in service. So that's what that is. We have a meeting with the contractor tomorrow, as they will be doing a tie-in tomorrow night at Shepherd Street and as well at the park. And so those customers right there on Shepherd will be out of service tomorrow night between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. And they were given notice this morning that that's going to occur, and they have everyone's contact information if anything goes wrong. So far so good on that project. The contractor's been great to work with, sending daily, every morning, a schedule of where he's going to be and what's going to occur, and so far so good. So it's been good working with them. On to page 2, a handful of items. So the Baja Road project improvements, we're actually having the 1-year warranty inspection tomorrow morning to go through that to make sure how everything's holding up in the 1-year warranty. So that will be then. Still waiting and working with the Department of Agriculture on release of the final funds for that project. Last time that was checked, it was, I think we checked a few weeks ago with Grant Works, and they followed it with the state, and it's still pending. So we're trying to get more information on that because now we're at the 1-year warranty, and there's still a outstanding balance owed to the city. Water plant number 3 improvements. We have the contracts back from the contractor today. We're doing a final check, and then we'll get them over to your attorney to review, and then we'll bring those for the city to execute to get that project started. GLO is ongoing. We have a follow-up call on Monday with the Grant Works, your grant administrator, for that project to get that moving forward. Lift station number 1, the closeout of that contract is still ongoing. We've been going back and forth with the contractor on damages. I think as we've discussed previously at meetings, we're getting close to that. And one item that I forgot to put in my report is we did also hold this past month a 1-year warranty inspection for the Atkins Creek project. And so they had a very small list of punch list items the contractor is working to get those addressed. Regarding developments, they're listed. Main things where we did approve plans and the plat for Moon over Montgomery. And Panda Express, we provided comments, and I talked to them again today, so I expect to see the revised plans back momentarily so we can get those turned back around and hopefully get them approved. Ongoing construction, Hills of Town Creek Section 4. They're currently continuing to work on that. On page 3 of our report, the 1-year warranties, the 2 that have movement for Hills of Town Creek Section 3 and Emma's Way, the concrete work and street work that is ongoing. So Emma's Way has been poured and is complete. They also poured for Hills of Town Creek Section 4, and now we'll be going back to make sure that the repairs they did have fixed the bird bathing that was occurring. Last items and last section, the Town Creek work by TxDOT. The highest level of detail I could get on the timeline for the riprap was in a few weeks. So I'll be in the city tomorrow morning for those inspections. So I'll take a step or a stop by and then follow up with TxDOT to see. I know, last week was bad for everybody, but just to follow up on a timeline. The camera tracks, which we discussed a few meetings ago, we have a follow.
Chris, there's someone with a number that's not muted. I think it ends in 6434. It's hard to hear Chris's report. Could you please go on mute? 6434. Or Susan, can you mute him?
That's a city hall number, so it's someone here in the city hall building.
So maybe Susan needs to.
On the camera tract, we have a follow-up meeting with Precinct 1 next week to talk about the transportation improvements regarding that camera tract in that surrounding area. So, so far so good. They're continuing to move forward on that project. And then the last couple items. So you're at the TxDOT Atkins Creek project. So the improvements right there at 1097. We had a utility meeting coordination with them on last Wednesday to discuss the location of existing utilities as part of their design. So they're continuing to move forward based on their schedule. It is still not until a 2026 project. However, they're trying to get it far enough along so if funding's available, they can move it sooner. But on the books, it is still a 2026 project. The turn lane is a 2021 project. We followed back up with TxDOT this past month, and it is, I believe it is I want to say April or May let date to bid that project. So that would put construction starting midsummer by the time they get through it. So we'll keep our eye on that and let you know what we see. And the very last item is your water well performance test. So these are tests that you do biannually. That goes through, they look at the production and the numbers of the well to make sure that they're operating as they're designed. And just as a reminder, what this does is it gives us a trend to know if there's a need for a rework or repairs to your water wells before a failure occurs. The only well that had some issue and it was water well number 2, which is at water plant 2, producing some levels of sand with it, and it's been consistent, potentially increasing slightly. So nothing corrective at this time. It is the smallest well you have. It doesn't provide a lot of benefit to the city, but it's something to continue to monitor. And at some point in time, the conversation that we talked about with the camera tract is, do we put a well here in the future? Do we put a well somewhere else? But at this time, no action to take. But your 2 main water supply wells at water plant 3 are both operating as they're intended. So no action to take. And that is all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Chris, are we worried about the Buffalo Springs Bridge holding up with any potholes or anything with this weather event?
We'll go out and look tomorrow. The potholes that have occurred in the past are not on the bridge. They're on the approaches and the outside. And what it looks like is a lot of the areas that were overlaid. So we had the existing pavement and because if you look up and down Buffalo Springs, there's issues with the street. And, I think some of that has related to that is that it's, an overlay on top of the existing street, but nothing wrong with the bridge structure itself. But we have a handful of meetings tomorrow out in the city, and I'll just swing by and we'll take a look.
Great, thank you. Council, if there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept the departmental reports.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the departmental reports. This motion is debatable, amendable, or requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the departmental reports, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will accept the departmental reports. Item number 3 on your agenda. Consideration of possible action regarding video streaming equipment purchase and installation. Richard?
I think Richard's muted.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
he is.
I had put it off because there was some back feed here, and so I'd forgotten
Okay.
about that. Thank you. City Council had asked about live streaming meetings as far back as 2018 as ways to increase civic engagement. Staff has researched the topic, especially in light with new technologies available, and with new popularity during the pandemic timelines. At the original time of being looked at, it was thought to be too great of an expense for the perceived benefit. Over this past year, online meetings have taken a larger role in how we conduct city activities. They've become a bigger role in how public does many things. Allowing the public to view city meetings online, is probably now becoming more of an essential service than an optional one. We do know, while we may have seen a decrease in the number of people who watch these meetings live, we do know there are people who are picking them up where it's convenient on their schedule in a taped format when they're easily available through the city's website. Staff has obtained 3 proposals for improvements to the audio and visual systems for the city council chambers. An overview of the proposals is included, with the agenda item that was sent out. The proposals are each based on the company's core services, and they're not equal in what they offer, but we wanted to get a spectrum across the board. The key points we feel to consider are the staff involvement level. How automated do we want the system to be? Whether if it's a fully serviceable system that has almost no input needed from city staff, that could be $30,000 or even more on an annual basis just to run the system in addition to the hardware. On the other hand, city staff operating the system has staff time cost and a much lower cost, and I think is more flexible with our needs. Public interaction, broadcasting meetings versus interactive meetings, they have different cost and different complexity implications. The project was initially seen as a broadcast-only pursuit. Platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Teams enable all participants to interact in real time. We could generally come to see this as a common feature in meetings. The biggest barrier we would have to combining real-time interactivity with a live stream broadcast is there ends up being an additional time lag between the systems, and there ends up to be a high cost to find ways to mitigate and work around that time lag if we're hosting an in-city council chamber meeting with outside participants trying to participate in a live format. Adaptability, 2 of the proposals come from companies that offer proprietary solutions, which means their own computer code is integrated into the system in a way that only they will be able to work on. The 3rd proposal provides a solution using off-the-shelf components that allows complete ownership of the system and operation by the city. This proposal, we feel, allows for maximum flexibility for changes to the system, whether it be in the short or the long-term future. And then we expect it to work well as we readapt back to meeting live, and would still be able to have a live stream format that was originally envisioned back in 2018, even when we have a full audience after the pandemic. The recommendation from city staff is the presentation that was by AV Design Pros, by offering, allowing the city administrator to contract with AV Design Pros for a live stream solution for City Hall. We're asking not to exceed $30,000. The proposal they provide us was $27,000. We just want to have a not to exceed figure that's a little bit higher, should there be some minor adjustments that need to be included. Dave McCorkadale, the city's assistant city administrator and director of planning and development, he was the one who interacted with all these companies and walked through he's available here for specific questions, if there are specific questions from the city council as well.
I've got a question. Why can't we use the school system's public chambers? It's been offered. Alan, is there a legal reason we can't use the MISD meeting facilities that they use? Because it's certainly much bigger than ours. And it doesn't cost anything.
There would not be a legal reason why the city couldn't enter into agreement with the school to use those.
I'll add to your question, Tom, or a partial answer may be oftentimes school board meetings do seem to coincide with our city council meetings.
Okay.
At least one of the ones in the month. So if it would either be, I presume since we would be the one asking, it would be us changing our meeting dates to be able to work around that.
To save $35,000, I have no problem with that. Do we really think we'd get a return on this? I mean, we have 5 additional people tonight. Do we really think more people are going to tune in because we have this high dollar AV equipment?
Well, what we do know is there are people who are tuning in, not necessarily live, but we record, these meetings are all recorded and put it on the city's website. And we do know there are people who are picking them up after, after the broadcast time where it's live, meaning, Tuesdays, 6 p.m., but they may watch it Wednesday or Thursday, on their schedule. That said, going back to your original question, the one downside I would have about meeting in a school building is if there was any need to go back and pull for city staff to pull written materials, we wouldn't have that ability. I'll also say that doesn't happen very often. So, but that's one thing I think this council would need to consider. As Dave McCorkadale said, it might then have to involve us also rescheduling to different meeting dates, which is something council could choose to decide if they wanted to do. We could also just continue with the meetings as we're conducting them now. If council wants me to approach MISD to have more significant discussions with them about using those chambers, I'm certainly very happy to do that.
Doesn't cost anything, Richard. Let's just inquire and just see if there might be a workaround to this expensive proposal.
Richard, can you clarify, like City of Willis, City of Conroe, do they all have similar equipment to this?
I know specifically what the City of Conroe has. They actually utilize the Swagit system, as does, I know, at least one other local government, the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District for Montgomery County. It's a higher price system. It is more fully featured as well. It'll allow you to play it back, the recording, from individual tabs for each agenda item. And that company provides someone to do all the work related to the video. So it's that level of continuing cost, because they charge by meeting, that we were not planning to recommend that system.
So is there a way to bear this burden across everybody that would be using this equipment? So like P&Z, MEDC, court cost, versus just saying, hey, it's all going to be on the city. I get that it's coming out of the budget no matter what, but is there a way to share the burden versus all out of one account?
With regard to P&Z, that's, I think, oh, sorry, Rich, I was only going to say the P&Z does not have a budget. So we, certainly that piece would be on the city.
Yeah. And where I was going with that is to answer, certainly I think that can be done. As Dave said, P&Z does not have a separate budget. MEDC does have a separate budget. The court budget is separate within in the city system. And we could spend the time to delve into how it would be used and how that could be apportioned across different budget elements, and bring that back to city council at an upcoming meeting as well.
Do you know what the timeline looks like to have this installed? Like if we say go ahead on this, when are we proposing it being up and running?
We would expect, if we went with AV Design Pros, we would expect that we would have it up and running by the first meeting of April, if not the second meeting of March.
I think Zoom, Tom, to your point, it's free, but at the same time, we got to get out of our house and get back into chambers. Seeing people laying on their beds or eating during the meetings is just not a professional look. And if we can get back into chambers and yet still be able to project to those that can't make it to the meeting and be mobile, kind of like Commissioner's Court is, or even the City of Conroe, I think that's kind of the objective here.
I'd love to get back in the council chambers, but I just don't think we need this kind of luxury again. I think we should figure out something, a lot more cost effective. There's got to be something else out there.
And if council wishes, we'll be happy to go back to the drawing board and take that request and look at other alternatives.
One point I'll add to Tom's point about because when I first started this back in 2018, this was one of the very first projects I took on after leaving council and coming to staff. And initially, I am very frugal by nature, found about a $2,000, $3,000 solution that requires about a $60,000 a year IT person to be able to run. I think that's and that's where, again, the difference between the services that these guys offer is, pardon me, is that, kind of the expertise in-house to run it, within, if it runs, it runs, but if it doesn't, then where do you go to fix it? And that's where I at least, ran into brick walls with regard to a very, very shoestring operation, because in my mind, I thought, well, I can just, I can install a webcam on the ceiling and just, run Zoom and everything will be fine. And what I found after digging into that is, well, if you don't have the in-house expertise to set that up and work on that and operate that, when it stops working, you don't have anything.
And honestly, in the tech world, $30,000 is not a huge amount. I mean, I know it's a huge number to bear up front, but my husband does tech for a living and he services City of Willis. So I knew what their number was that they paid for theirs because I asked this week. So we're still looking at a way less number here at $30,000.
And not proprietary, doesn't lock you into their items that they can choose the cost on. You can go to Best Buy or somewhere else and pull it off the shelf, which is the better solution of the two.
And I think it also means if in the future we decided we needed something more, it's not only easier to expand, we could take the hardware and go with someone who had a proprietary system to write something if we needed those greater features at a future time. And if we don't need that, then we don't have to.
Can I ask, would this improve the acoustics in chambers?
Yes, ma'am. About $3,000 or $4,000, almost $4,000 of the system is an audio improvement that would be, that is, that's needed.
Oftentimes, yes, that's
from
the feedback.
2006 or 2017, whenever the building was built. So the audio system itself, again, close to 4,000 of the 26,000 that the proposal is for would be for, new microphones and a new audio mixer in the council chambers that kind of irrespective of whether or not the council decided to live stream, certainly the audio in the room itself needs to be upgraded.
Yeah, I've heard that from folks that when I've sat out in the audience as well as after council meetings, there's been a lot of people have a hard time hearing what we're saying. And those microphones, those of you that's been on council at any length of time, they're 50-50 if they're going to work. And if they don't work, it's hard to hear in council chambers what's being spoken about.
Well, I make a motion that we accept the recommendation here to authorize city administrator to contact the AV Design Pros for City Hall live stream solution not to exceed $30,000.
So we don't want to give Richard an opportunity to speak with the school system?
I don't want to borrow a system.
No, I'm talking about using their public facilities.
So are
So,
we going to change our meeting dates?
I'm sorry,
Are we going to change our meeting dates? Because they meet on the same
Oh.
date with us.
Richard needs to speak with them and see if, I know one date in the month, we don't meet the same time they do, according to Matt, when I spoke with him.
So you want to do this like one time a month and go do that the other time a month?
No, what I would like to do is table it and have Richard bring back more information.
Hmm.
And I'll do what council wants and directs me to do. I don't have any problems, doing one or the other. There's obviously a motion on the floor right now, but, if council wants me to approach MISD about utilizing their location for P&Z, city council and MEDC meetings, then I'm happy to do that.
And let's find out how many people it would accommodate.
I'll second the motion that Julie made.
It has been moved and seconded that we authorize the city administrator to contract with AV Design Pros for a city hall live stream solution not to exceed $30,000. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor to authorize the city administrator to contract with AV Design Pros for a city hall live stream solution not to exceed $30,000, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
No,
Mr. Wilkerson, I didn't hear from you. Did you say you're muted? I can't hear you. It looks like it's your phone that's muted, TJ, and not the computer.
I've just sent him a message to unmute.
So as it stands, we have Carol Langley and Julie Davis is yes, Tom Cronin and nay, and TJ Wilkerson, you're still muted.
If he can just motion with a thumbs down.
Can you say no? No, okay.
Okay.
TJ Wilkerson is a no. So that is 2 yeas and 1 no. I will be the tie vote and I vote yes. So the motion has been approved and we will authorize the city administrator to contract with AV Design Pros for a city hall live stream solution not to exceed $30,000.
Okay. Mayor, I just want to be sure I'm clear on that. That was 2 votes in favor, 2 votes against, and you cast the tie-breaking vote in favor, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
There is nothing on the agenda under the executive session. Next, on the agenda is council inquiry.
I do have one item I want to point out to council, if I may, under this section. I did mean to say this under the utility report and with the other items. I think I neglected to mention it. Due to a number of city residents, utility customers who had broken pipes may have experienced a significant water loss related to the freeze. I have instructed city staff to gather the information when they are providing reports to, or if they're contacting the city related to higher than normal water bills. We are in the process of preparing to send out those utility bills. And I mean, we do have a normal process for consideration of credits. And I'm going to, I do have discretion in the matter. I'm going to be looking probably more closely, for city residents that may need some assistance because of where the freeze caused otherwise unexpected water loss due to broken pipes. And I did want to make council aware of that I was going to be considering all of those on a case-by-case basis. Having an electronic metering system allows us to identify when those leaks occurred. So certainly we can timestamp them back to being related to this specific freeze event. And we will be looking at all of those on a case-by-case basis.
And Sarah, was there any update from Robert Walker in regards to the Lone Star Community Center and the generator, the backup generator not working? What is precinct one's responsibility to get it working so that we don't have this again during hurricane season?
So great question. He and I had a chat yesterday. We were going to have a meeting with the chief and with Richard to discuss. During this whole storm, we had plan A, B, C, and D. And then we end up going to G, H, and I, right? So which is great. We were able to provide shelter and had a plan. But what I've learned through all of this is no church in town has a generator. Margaritaville does not have a generator. And neither does any of the schools in town but Madeley. So, but that's great because we're able to service a bigger part of the area. And our hope is that Commissioner Walker will go in partnership with us. And what that looks like remains to be seen. But I got an idea that we're going to propose, and he's willing to sit down and talk. So
good. And is it an urgent matter so that we're pushing it before hurricane season, or are we?
Definitely.
Okay, good.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, hurricane season and beating that with any updates for planning and responsiveness is definitely high on our priority list.
The high school there was 2 generators, but one was down. So we could potentially use that in their cafeteria. I walked it and it was warm enough. Right. But anyway, we ended up providing shelter, and that was good. And we were not overrun, but we'll be speaking with him.
Our part of the city that needed it or would have needed it were completely cut off by going all the way out to Walden. And so I felt like that was a big disservice to those who, I mean, even Carol and I talked this week, and she's like, I could have walked to, Lone Star. I couldn't, there's no way for her to walk to Walden. So
understood. And that was one of our comments to him as well. So, yeah.
And I think, I know in my conversations with the superintendent, he and MISD learned several items about their emergency capabilities as well. And we're going to be working with them as we improve the city plans going forward. I know they're also going to be working to improve the school district plans going forward. And we're going to be communicating closely for how we can, as both parties, improve cooperatively together as well. And then it's that partnership that will go, as the mayor said, to work with Robert Walker in Precinct 1. So we definitely want to have locations that are closer here into the city than what we had this time out. That was a fairly quickly put together item, but high on our priority list is having a much closer location.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clarify, we have no control over Entergy. Like there's no, we can choose Entergy or we can't choose Entergy. As a city, we have Entergy, and that's what we have. Correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
I heard lots of those complaints during the storm too. So
I'm hoping they learned lessons along the way.
I think we all hope that.
If there's nothing else for council inquiry, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. We adjourn this meeting. This motion is debatable and amendable and requires majority vote. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will adjourn this meeting. It is 7:20 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you.